Welcome to the Isaac Clemens Show. This is episode number 3. Today is Monday, December 8th. If you'd like to contact the show, you may do so by emailing us at the Isaac Clemens Show at gmail.com. And of course, please give us a follow, share the link with your friends, foes, family, neighbors. Also, we're going to begin having guests and co-hosts on the show, just working out some hardware and technical matters. We're even going to add some music. That's a process in and of itself to stay in line with the licensing and copyright laws. So keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of happening in our community. We look forward to hearing from some different perspectives, and I'm sure it'll be a break from listening to me. And if you'd like to be on the show in the hot seat yourself or as a co-host, please send us an email. Okay, today we'll be talking about three separate things: seaborne narco terrorism strikes, the Epstein files, and World Cup draw results. I'm just kidding. I have little influence on those things, and quite frankly, they have little impact on my local life, with the exception of the drug abuse situation. But if you want to know, I think Biden should have released the files. Repeat the line. Soccer is a boring activity to watch. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. And with the boats, I'm for just about anything to stop the scourge of drugs in this country. So let's do it. It's hard, perhaps, to understand the size of the drug problem if your biggest concern is how much moisture is in the snow in Teton Valley this week. And let's face it, for the most part, we live on an isolated life here in Teton County. And if not for social media and the news outlets, we would be blissfully unaware. Regarding the boats, if you've never lived, worked, or played in an area where there's an open air drug situation, it's pretty wild and sad all at the same time. If you've never seen this in real life, I'd encourage you to find a big city where it's happening. Unfortunately, there's many to pick from. Go watch it in real life and see if you feel differently after seeing this in person. You might feel differently about the efforts that are being used to stop it. I have a particular memory of my time in New York City regarding drug abuse. One day I descended into the underbelly of the city to catch a train, the subway. And as I got to the platform where the train pulls up, or the subway, there was a young man with one shoe on one foot and one barefoot with his sock and shoe sitting there at the edge of the train platform. He was hunched over at the edge and he had a needle in one hand. He's desperately looking for a vein, a viable vein in between his toes so he could get high and inject up. Why his toes, you ask? Well, at that point in the death spiral of drug addiction, your veins are either trashed from drug abuse or perhaps you're early on in the addiction spiral and you're trying to conceal your behavior. This was not in the ghetto. This was in one of the wealthiest, most privileged, affluent areas of Manhattan. It's a scene I'll never forget. So good job on the boat project. Less drugs from our foreign enemies coming onto our shores is a good thing. Now back to Teton County. The Y Project. Let's talk about this. First of all, it's not the YMCA anymore. I guess the woke police and donor class got to them, just speculating on the name change, but now it's called the Y. Some places they still use the YMCA in documents, etc. This project was discussed at the November 24th County Commissioner meeting, and you can watch the video recording if you'd like. The local paper said it was the 23rd. The 23rd was a Sunday. The meeting was on Monday, the 24th. A massive project's being proposed. In short, they want to build a recreation complex complete with aquatics and traditional indoor and outdoor sports fields and even daycare facilities. There's some discrepancy on the scope of the outdoor fields. I'm not sure how far they want to build that out. In short, according to the people leading the charge on this, everyone, and I say everyone in air quotes, wants a pool. You hear that all the time. I don't know how true it is, but they say they have the data to back that up. The problem, which is obvious to anyone with any familiarity with a pool, is the upkeep. Pool cannot stand on its own, whether it's in your backyard, unless you just have money to throw into the ground, or as a financial success in the community setting, short of a massive infusion of cash from either memberships, donations, and of course, tax money to subsidize it and keep it viable. Um, Up next for the Y project, according to the lady who gave the pitch for it at the commissioner meeting, they're going to be doing a survey or a poll of public interest for actually building out a Y, and they say it's going to be taking place over the next 3 months, starting in January, I believe. A third party will be conducting the survey, so be aware if you're approached or called or emailed by someone gauging your interest in the Y beginning in January. They're not just calling for fun; they're seeing if you're ready to back this. Um, they want to know, in short, do you want this in your community? I don't know the extent and the types of questions they're going to ask. I assume this isn't their first time doing it, so we'll see how that plays out. And remember, to some degree, they're asking you, do you want your tax money to be spent on such a thing? Even if it's a little bit of your tax money, might be through the recreation tax. We'll get to that in a minute. So far, no business plan has been put forth that I'm aware of showing that a Y or a rec center or something like it can stand on its own without local level taxpayer funding. I assume somebody would have done it already if it was going to be a moneymaker. I personally have no problem with a Y or a similar facility being built, so long as it's financially sustainable on its own without tax money would be the best case scenario. Some of my criticism to this project includes the daycare portion. Obviously, I have no problem with the daycare. Again, it should not be a taxpayer subsidized daycare. Commissioner James is super eager about the potential daycare offerings the Y would bring. He said as much at that meeting. Imagine any other business opening and shaking down the taxpayers for maybe 20% or more. Again, no number has been laid out how much they're looking for. But imagine a private business opening up and expecting the taxpayer to cover their operating costs at a time when so many other public interests are underfunded. Law enforcement, the fire district, roads, bridges, the list goes on. If it's being pumped up as a daycare solution, I don't want my recreation taxing district money going to subsidize a daycare. With the recreation tax, we were promised better trailheads, youth sports, improved trail conditions, a gun range, and 1,000 other things. I don't remember a subsidized daycare being on the list of recreation plans where our tax money would go. And even if a dollar of taxpayer money is going to the Y, how do you carve out where exactly that money is going? It is all going into the same pie. If 20% of their budget is taxpayer money, then we're paying for 20% of childcare, right? I know. Somehow it'll be spent differently. It'll be allocated. It'll be earmarked. I don't believe any of that. There was a question raised by Commissioner Wolf about where the county grant or matching fund money is going to be coming from. And it sounds like the intent is to take it from the rec district tax money. This was brought up at the end of this discussion at the county commissioner meeting, and the answer given and the grumblings around it were about as clear as mud. So there's a long way to go on this, but keep your eyes and ears open. Remember what we were promised and told by the rec district and the people collecting signatures for it, and hold them to it. I don't recall childcare being under the recreation heading. On to another topic, and this one grinds my gears in particular. So let's chew on this as we mark the halfway through the holiday shopping season. The shop local hypocrisy, I will call it. If you've paid attention to retail cycles in most small towns, there's always this push to shop local around the holidays and throughout the year, whether it's Memorial Day, Labor Day, etc. It's always shop local, shop local. And as I predicted in April, the same people who said tough cookies during the absolutely absurd No Kings protest when local businesses were being punished and hemorrhaging sales as hundreds of people blocked sidewalks and drags, took up parking, and dissuaded people by their very presence from shopping at local businesses, they're now out there waving these shop local banners. How ironic. Here are some of the social media highlights from that time period earlier this year when I was raising these objections to the anti local business sidewalk blocking antics. I was told by some Facebookers, if you don't like it, you don't have to attend. Another person said, it's literally the off season. Anyone who is going to spend money here is already skiing on the river or at some Easter event. The protesters get to use their right to speak their voices. If you don't like it, you're about 6 months too early before citizens who disagree with you can't do it anymore. You'll get your time to be a Nazi. Just give the rest of us a little time before we lose freedoms and our rights. Of course, this person throws in the Nazi word because why not? That's the thing to do in 2025. So if you're defending local businesses, just remember you're a Nazi. Another person said, isn't democracy great? Somehow now blocking businesses is democracy. I don't know. To which I replied, yes, nothing better than harming small family owned businesses on a Saturday morning. They fired back. The great patriot that you are should know that there's a price to be paid for democracy. How noble of them. So next time you see a local business fold up or hear of a shop owner struggling to make rent, just know that part of the reason they closed up shop was in the name of democracy, according to one local democracy expert. Is it a reach to say that people who recklessly harm local businesses with their protesting activities and then turn around and advocate for their success are no different than an arsonist who burns a building down, then sells them the lumber to build a new store? You see what I'm getting at here. Are you pro local business or just pro local business when it's fashionable to be so? I personally spoke with three local business owners during those protests. They actually contacted me at that time and shared photos and their lived experiences. They reported no parking for customers, no foot traffic during the protests, and year over year decline in sales for those days. It's very easy to pull up those numbers with modern point of sale software on your computer and see, oh yeah, we're down 20% compared to last year and the year before that. I wonder why. What protesters refuse to believe is that their civil protest is off putting and threatening to someone. Right now, given what has happened with some frequency at protests around the country, it doesn't matter if it's small town USA or big cities. Every so often, someone decides to drive the car onto the sidewalk. Someone pulls out a gun. Someone starts pepper spraying people. So now, when mom, dad, and their children are driving through town, like Driggs in this case, they might stop and think, do I want to be around this crowd and risk my family's safety if someone goes nuts today? And they keep on driving. And the businesses lose, and so does the town. They might think, why risk my family's safety for a milkshake or a t shirt? Attitudes have shifted as it relates to crowds and crowd safety, and it's because of the tragedies that have happened during such events. Look at what just happened in Utah this year at a No Kings protest with a so called protest peacekeeper. They see someone pulling out a rifle from her backpack for God knows what reason. They see it and they use their gun and squeeze off a few warning shots, and someone unrelated gets hit and is dead. Here's a snippet from KSTU Fox 13 News. Their article said, as thousands of people marched downtown following the rally, Alder fired his weapon at a man seen holding an AR-15 rifle. The ensuing gunfire struck fashion designer Afa Ah Lu, a bystander who was attending the event and was hit near 151 South State Street. Ah Lu was transported to a nearby hospital where he later died. Alder had been hired by SLC 50501, the group that organized the local protest, and was not a law enforcement officer or associated with the Salt Lake City Police Department, but was a military veteran. According to Salt Lake Police, the event permit filed by SLC 50501 did not indicate the presence of organized or armed security at the protest. Again, these are the kinds of wild happenings that are happening at these No Kings and similar protests. And you're going to tell me this isn't hurting local businesses? If you believe that, then you're part of the problem in the decline for small businesses. And I have a bridge to sell you. I am not, let me be clear, I am not denying or seeking to deny anyone's right to peacefully protest. But to say these protests don't impact the local economy they're standing in front of, that's simply untrue. I did suggest to some of these people making the area in front of Driggs City Hall and the Geo Center a protester plaza. There's plenty of space. It would impact local businesses less because you're not standing in front of them. And you would still have equal visibility along Main Street, the highway, for vehicle traffic. But my idea, of course, never made the cut. I guess it's more fun in the end of the day. Just harm local business. They are now begging you to shop at, and you can go play with the crosswalk buttons in the meantime. All that being said, I do encourage you to visit local retail stores and patronize them during the holiday season and throughout the year. They're owned and operated by our friends and neighbors, and let's help them offset the losses from the No Kings protests. Okay, if you want to see some grade A shit slinging, the county commissioner open mic period is where it's at. You will not see better theatrics and acting anywhere else in the county. I challenge you to prove me wrong on that. At the Monday meeting, the commissioners called an audible and moved the curfew ordinance up on the agenda due to the massive public interest. I think it was a smart move by them. It took the wind out of the torch and pitchfork carrying types and spared the prosecutor and sheriff's office from having to hear 100 public comments on the same thing and working from behind the eight ball. It would also probably save 4 hours of meeting time. The presentation was almost a full hour from the prosecutor, the sheriff, and the assistant prosecutor. The intent behind what I'm calling the curfew ordinance is to allow law enforcement to intervene before juveniles get tangled up in the legal system, which you would think would be a good thing. But I go on. They said it would allow law enforcement to rein in parents who have a flippant attitude about where and what their offspring are doing in the wee hours. Imagine the inverse of this. The cops see a juvenile, they report back to the parents don't care. An hour later, the kid gets hit by a car, kidnapped, etc. Or the cops see the kid and do nothing because they're not committing a crime per se. But, what reason does a cop have to stop a kid just walking around Driggs at 2 in the morning, right? They're just out, getting milk and eggs, I guess. The same people who were against the ordinance would then come out looking for a pound of flesh. You know they will. They'll say, why didn't the police do something? Why didn't they teach them a lesson? Why didn't they notify the parents? If I recall, it was the Gabby Petito case a couple of years ago where that couple had some interaction with law enforcement in Utah, I believe, and the police made the call not to arrest. They separated him for the night. And then the police were later vilified. Of course, that story had a very tragic ending. She was murdered. and her boyfriend took his own life in Florida, I believe. And she was found just outside of Grand Teton National Park. But the police were skewered for that because they didn't get involved. And now that case alone has changed how law enforcement responds and interacts with victims or perceived victims of domestic abuse. So, to be clear, this ordinance here in Teton County that's being discussed would impact juveniles. We're talking people under 18. One of the other issues that the sheriff's office talked about today that they've run into, and the prosecutor echoed these comments, is that what do we do when we come across juveniles that are with adults, specifically adults who are not a relative or have no apparent reason to be with a child under the age of 18? Right now, they're limited on what they can do in these situations. If they pull someone over for a traffic stop and they see this, they're not allowed to prod them as much as maybe they should be able to if they see something that's obvious. Of course, the public commenters think the sheriff is going to stop and harass a minivan with two soccer coaches and 18 age girls returning home from a tournament. And they said, clear as day, that's not what we're going to do. But, sometimes you just can't convince people otherwise. They get an idea in their head, and that's the end of it. So now the county's telling you they want to. If you can't parent your flock, they're willing to help you. At first glance, I was suspect of this idea. But after reading the language of the ordinance, I had a change of heart on it, and I support it. They did say today that taking into consideration the public comments that were made and some other notions that came to mind, and they put together this proposed ordinance for Teton County by looking at ordinances around the state of Idaho that have been successful, have made it through the court system being challenged, et cetera. And they put together what they felt was the best conglomeration of those other ordinances. They also made it clear we're not targeting parents with underage children on their way home from Costco and Texas Roadhouse with roadside checkpoints. They are specifically targeting underage kids that are out raising hell in the wee hours. The issue of night games came up multiple times during the public comment period today. If you don't know what night games are, more or less, it's after the hours, capture the flag, hide and seek, et cetera. And of course, it starts out as that, and then it spills onto private property. The sheriff's office said there's often vehicles involved. There's been times where kids are riding on top of moving vehicles. These night games, according to the presentation, often lead to people calling to the police and saying, "Hey, there's 20 kids running around my backyard. You got to get out here and do something." I mean, imagine how unnerving that would be at 3 o'clock in the morning to have this happening. And apparently, it happens with enough frequency that the sheriff's office and prosecutor's office have been looking for a way to rein this in. We're seeing this parent accountability trend throughout the country where it's whether it's with school truancy or little Johnny or Susie decides to bring their parents' gun to school for show and tell. Now, mom and dad go to jail with them. It's a win-win. Accountability, and there's no separating of the families. They get to share a jail cell and work things out together as a family. The Teton County prosecutor made it clear this ordinance does not provide for criminal arrest. It provides for civil infractions. They can write you a ticket if you want to play games. So Prosecutor Smith, Sheriff Lamo, and the newly hired Assistant Prosecutor Godfrey, they gave a refresher of sorts in parenting, in my opinion, or more accurately, an education to the general public, some of which their jaws were agape at the notion that there are, in fact, difficult to parent children in this community and in every community. And sadly, there's some parents, for one reason or another, just don't care, and they're fine letting their children roam like feral cats and just let the chips fall where they may. There was some concern that this would be used to target the undocumented children in the community or the Hispanic community. The prosecutor said, as a matter of fact, that many of these parent driven calls, when they call 911 to say, "Hey, my kid ran away. I don't know where my kid is. Where are they? Can you help me?" She said many of the times they are from undocumented um, children, and presumably the parents are undocumented themselves, which is a separate issue in itself. She said after thinking on this, leading up to today's meeting, she couldn't put together a path where ICE or any other similar law enforcement agencies would get involved and cause any problems for these undocumented or illegal migrants that are here in Teton Valley. But of course, people wanted to make that leap. She did make that leap. However, she did caution, if your children are suddenly not children, they're over the age of 18 and they get arrested. Now, yes, there are going to be problems if they get put into the adult criminal justice system. So, I think that the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's office have good intentions. They're trying to get ahead of a problem. I wish they would have given numbers on what juvenile probation looks like. They did not give those numbers, but perhaps they will in the future. There was lots of concern in the open mic portion about at-risk youth being targeted. Personally, I can't imagine the police doing anything but trying to help if they came across a child who was fleeing a harmful or dangerous home situation. It was crazy to me, but there were parents there admitting they know their kids drink, they do drugs. But one mother said they're just kids. I don't know how in today's world a parent, and I'm not a parent, full disclosure, I don't know how a parent cannot extrapolate and say, my 17-year-old kid that's doing drugs today and drinking, mind you, the drinking age is 21, I think in the entire country now, how this couldn't be a problem for them going forward, whether it's employment drama, if they want to go to the military, anything. Why would you almost enable or turn a blind eye to your kid, going right up to the line of getting involved in the criminal justice system? If you were a parent, would you ever go on record on camera in front of the community and the top cop and the prosecutor and make these generalizations that it's just kids being kids while talking about underage drinking and drug use? That's crazy to me. I think a lot of people are missing the point that this ordinance is intended to keep kids out of the juvenile justice and then the adult justice system. And the police said, listen, we're not going to go out and just start rounding kids up if this ordinance goes into effect. We want to have this as a tool in our toolbox to be able to say, hey, we're taking you home to your parents. If we see you out again, we're going to have a problem here. We're going to write you up. There was some talk today about, hey, maybe we should have a system where it's a warning first, whether it's a verbal or written warning, and then we get into the financial penalty phase of it after your second or third offense, perhaps. At the end of the day, will this help prevent crimes committed by this demographic? I'm not sure. We'll see. I will ding the sheriff and the prosecutor's office on one related topic. There's quite a few people today who I'd say were shocked to hear, seemingly for the first time, some of the very serious things that go on within the law enforcement realm here. There's almost no reporting on law enforcement activity in Teton Valley. There's a little tiny section on page 23 of the paper every week or every month with a small bit of reporting, a sentence here, a sentence there, about 10 different arrest interactions, reporting on what the sheriff's office is encountering out in the street. There's no real reporting from the prosecutor's office that I see as far as what's going on in the court system, where the cases are. I understand you can't go talking about everything in the prosecutorial world, but I feel it'd be better for the community if they knew some of this. Then there wouldn't be such a sticker shock effect, if you will, when the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's office are seemingly coming out of nowhere going, hey, we need an ordinance to rein in this, nighttime shenanigans that are going on. So I think they could both do a better job on educating the public on what they're seeing come through their systems. I also saw the illustrious Jackson Hole News and Guide, I use the term news loosely, was hard at work writing another one-sided biased article with a headline that read, Teton County, Idaho prosecutor pitching juvenile youth curfew in far-reaching ordinance. So right away, the article's biased right out of the gate. They could have got rid of the far-reaching part and just left ordinance and let people, read the actual facts and make their own decision. But this is a biased newspaper. Almost everything they write about Teton County is a slam piece, especially as it relates to politics. If I were the prosecutor, I would have declined to comment on that. It sounds like they spoke on Sunday, and I would have told the reporter, "Hey, come to the meeting on Monday and find out with everyone else." But that didn't happen. So by allowing the Jacksonville News and Guide to drop the story Sunday night, all it did was fire up people even more and force the prosecutor to work from behind. It was an unforced error, in my opinion. All in all, I think this tool would give the sheriff's office some teeth, but only baby teeth, not mountain lion or T-Rex type teeth. And as the saying goes, nothing good happens after midnight. So let's see how this transpires. It appears that they tabled it for today and pushed it off. A lot of tabling going on with the current slate of county commissioners. One last thing that I was watching, and it ended up getting yanked from the agenda last week, was the application to vacate a road up in the northern part of the county, meaning the county would have legally abandoned a section of road and it would have become, in this case, part of the Teton Ridge Ranch property. I was keeping an eye on this. More than anything, I wanted to see how the commissioners wrangled with this decision to vacate a section of road. Um, There were arguments on both sides of this, but it appears that the applicant, perhaps saw all the blowback from the public and decided to pull back their application. So this was dead in the water today. There was quite a bit of written comment submitted on this. It was in the agenda packet for the Monday the 8th meeting. If you want to go back and read people's public comments that were submitted in writing, there was only one verbal comment made today. The gentleman didn't realize that they had pulled the application, so it was a moot point. So I guess for now, we'll never know. In closing, I hear this all the time. When did that happen? Who decided that? I didn't see anything on the paper. Well, it's happening every day here in our own backyard. There's a public meeting of some kind almost every single weekday in the county. School board meetings, fair board, fire district, school district, city council meetings. There's four separate planning and zoning boards when you include the individual cities here. So instead of focusing 99% of your time on what's happening with World Cup soccer tournaments and drug boats, maybe check out what's happening in your own backyard. And if you like politics for the sport of it, there's plenty of that locally. It's not as boring as a political scene as you might think. Make a plan and attend a meeting. That's all for tonight. If you'd like to contact the show, email us at the Isaac Clemens Show at gmail.com. Have a great day and be safe.